Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is glide. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear glide used is to mean to move with a smooth and continuous motion. This is the most common way you're probably going to hear glide used. You might hear this word used to describe someone who is dancing, or even just the way someone sort of walks or moves into a particular space or position. A second way you might hear glide used is to mean to make an unpowered flight. There are devices, things, and we'll look a little later, that allow you to sort of move through the air. Those are called gliders, and you can probably tell that's a noun we'll talk about in a second. But sometimes we use this verb to describe what an airplane does when its engine isn't working, when it isn't able to power it forward. That's how this verb came up in one of my classes in the last week. We were talking about a particular pilot who glided her plane to the ground. And it was that idea the engines had failed, but she was able to kind of smoothly get it to land. A third way you might hear glide used is really specific to birds. When they're moving through the air with very little movement of their wings, right? So they're not flapping, they're just kind of, again, continuously moving through the air. They're gliding. You should know that glide is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, we're going to drop the E and then add ing to form gliding. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, glide, ends in a voiced D sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound, and we're going to add an extra syllable as we say this. It should sound like this: glided, glided. Okay? Now, we're not going to really study any phrasal verbs, but I want to note you will hear, and in just a moment you'll see some examples of glide with this first definition, moving in a continuous motion. You might hear glide across, glide past, glide down, and it's really just describing kind of that motion and where the motion is occurring. But again, doesn't really change our meaning here. So with that, let's talk about using the verb glide in the present progressive and the simple future. We'll start with the present progressive. We use this verb tense to talk about an action that is happening now, or an action that is in progress. Some teachers and some textbooks will call this the present continuous. That's okay, it means the same thing. I like calling it the present progressive because it reminds me that I need two parts. There are two P's there, so two P's, two parts, to make the affirmative. So I need a present form of be, that's going to be am, is, or are, and then I need that ing form of the verb. You can see that in my example here. The children on rollerblades are gliding along the path. Right? So that's that smooth, continuous motion. These must be really talented skaters. I don't feel like I glide when I'm on rollerblades. My motion is not smooth. Now, if you want to make a negative present progressive sentence, our structure is going to be to, again, start with a present form of be, so am, is, are. Then we'll use not, and then the ing form of the verb. You might hear people make contractions with is not, that can become isn't, and are not, that will become aren't. But remember, no contraction with am not. Here's another example sentence. He isn't gliding on the ice. Okay, so our example in this sentence, not a good skater. Many people, professional hockey players, figure skaters, right? They move very smoothly on ice, but people who aren't as experienced maybe aren't. And this person in our example sentence would be one of those who is not gliding, is not moving smoothly. Finally, if we want to make a yes or no question in the present progressive, we're going to do that by starting with our form of be that matches our subject. Subject comes next. Then we have that ing form of the verb. You can see that in the question, are they gliding across the dance floor? Right? So again, that smooth, continuous movement. Now let's take a look at the simple future. Today we're going to practice using will. It's really common to hear will used to express predictions, for people to make promises or offers as well. And the nice thing about this structure is that it's going to be the same no matter what our subject is. So we're going to have subject, will, and then our base verb. You can see that in the example. Another weather system will glide across the upper Midwest, spreading rain showers. I heard a sentence very close to this last night as I was watching my local weather. And again, it's that idea of kind of this continuous movement, essentially here, of a storm moving through this part of the United States. Now, if you want to make a negative simple future sentence, our structure is going to be will, not, and then the base verb. You can see in the example here, poor quality lipsticks won't glide on well. Okay? So with glide, sometimes we hear this used in all kinds of different products. I feel like I hear this word in many commercials for deodorant, but it's this idea of easily, smoothly being able to apply something. Here it's saying if you buy a kind of a cheap or low quality lipstick, it's not going to be applied easily or smoothly. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, we're going to start with will, then we're going to have our subject, then the base verb. Here's another example. Will the pilot glide the plane to a safe landing? So here we're probably talking about our second definition. Something has happened, the plane maybe is having engine trouble, and we're asking somebody to make a prediction. Hopefully this is a positive. Yes, the pilot is skillful enough to be able to glide the plane to the ground. Now let's spend a few moments looking at some words related to our verb glide. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of the word. So we have the exact same spelling, the exact same pronunciation. And when the word glide is used as a noun, generally we're referring to some kind of smooth, continuous movement. An example of this might be, this hawk often flies with 3 flaps and a glide. Okay? So that idea of it's going to move its wings kind of 3 times and then just coast might be another word to describe that. Continue moving through the air. Another related word you might hear is a glider. I mentioned this at the beginning as we were looking at the second definition here. So one way you'll hear glider used is to refer to a light aircraft. It's meant to go through the air for long periods of time, but it doesn't have an engine. So I've tried to find a picture of what one might look like, and you might be looking at that picture and thinking, it looks like an airplane. It does, but it doesn't have that strong powered engine. Okay? An example of this in a sentence could be, have you ridden in a glider? Right? I haven't, but maybe you've had that experience. A second way we can use glider is to refer to any sort of person or thing that glides. An example of this might be, flying geckos are great gliders, gliding up to 200 feet. Okay, so here we're describing an animal, a thing in this case, that is able to move in a smooth and continuous way. Another related verb you might hear is to hang glide. So this is sort of a sport that uses unpowered flying apparatuses. And I've got a couple pictures here to show you. Here's the first one. Here's a person. Our definition here says we have a frame, so hopefully you can see kind of the metal. I'm going to use my cursor here. Here's the metal frame, and then there's fabric. So here there's kind of two shades of blue and white fabric that's stretched over this frame. And this is actually something I have tried. So I've included a picture of me getting ready to go hang gliding. I did it with someone, a trained professional, because I do not know how to do that well. But about 10 years ago, a group of friends and we hang glided over southeastern Tennessee. So it was quite an experience, kind of fun. If you don't like being up high in the air, though, this might not be for you. But we did have this experience. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.